Benedict Canyon, high above Los Angeles, and standing out amongst all others, this palatial residence is famously home to the stars. It's also infamous for one of America's most iconic crimes, the shocking scene of mass murder on the orders of crazed cult leader Charles Manson.
I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. You do exactly what I say.
It may have been 50 years ago, but time does nothing to ease the horror.
Whatever is necessary to do, you do it.
5 people were slaughtered here in the dead of the night, including the stunning and heavily pregnant Hollywood actress Sharon Tate. Can I ask you, how keenly do you miss Sharon today, 50 years on?
I would love to have her here. Sharon was my big sister. Do I miss her? Yes. Would I like her here? Yes. Do I have this pain every day? No, I don't. But it's not far from the surface. Do I want revenge on these people? No, there is no such thing.
But nor does Deborah Tate believe the surviving Manson family killers should ever be allowed to go free. Right now, that is a very real possibility for murderer Leslie Van Houten. Her parole will be either permitted or denied within weeks.
I don't think that people that were condemned to death, that are undoubtedly guilty of the most heinous crimes in American history, should be let out simply because they're 60 years old.
I believe an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. That's the way I believe.
You don't believe that after 50 years there's hope for rehabilitation or room for forgiveness?
I don't believe in parole for murderers. No, I don't believe in that.
Do you look back on that very fateful day and wish you'd never taken the call? For Bob Burbridge, one of the first cops on the scene, the memory of those killings on the 9th of August 1969 will never be erased. How would you describe what you saw?
Oh, it was horrific. I mean, it was one of the worst things I've ever seen. I've never seen that many dead bodies in one place before. And it was horrible. It was just horrible. They were young people. They were innocent. People were slaughtered by knives and guns, and it was awful.
To love all the pain that you've caused people, all the anguish you've caused.
Oh, I don't know pain. I don't know pain. I have no depth of pain. I have no depth of suffering. I don't know ridicule.
The rantings of a madman. Charles Manson in full flight.
Fault makes strong. Good pain. Understand pain. Not bad. Pain's not bad. It's good.
But somehow, Manson made sense to the disaffected and impressionable. He collected them, mainly young women.
Charlie loves us to be beautiful, and he let us be beautiful.
And as their self-declared messiah, set up a commune at an old ranch just half an hour north of Los Angeles. To outsiders and filmmakers, Manson's ranch was what the 60s was all about. Free love and plenty of LSD. But it would soon turn much darker.
His biggest talent, if you will, an evil talent, was to prey on the very, very young and vulnerable. Some of his followers were as young as 12 years old.
Journalist Linda Deutsch is a longtime observer of Charles Manson and the girls who were drawn to him.
The people who followed Manson were, as he said, these are your children. And they were children from ordinary families who got sucked into a cult. He could say the most inane things, and they would think that it was gospel.
So they were young and they were damaged. Were they insane?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they were insane. I think they were drug-addled at that point.
Manson's gospel soon became deranged and deadly.
I'm ready to die for Charlie. He's ready to die for me. He has died for me.
He wanted to kickstart a race war. His plan was to commit mass murder, but make it look like it was done by black militants.
You have to be ready right now, right here, right now.
A wannabe musician, Manson thought the Beatles song, Helter Skelter, was an anthem to Armageddon, a message to him to get things started.
Charlie was a piece of work, I'll tell you. He was out there.
It was the 9th of August, 1969, the night Charles Manson turned his unthinkable plan into action.
When somebody needs to be killed, there's no wrong. You do it. And then you move on.
Aiming to create panic, Manson chose the celebrity home of Sharon Tate and her movie director husband, Roman Polanski.
Roman and Sharon had top billing.
Polanski was away that night. Unaware of what was to come, Sharon was entertaining friends. What do you think those last moments were like?
It must have been terrifying for these people, you know. They were just slaughtered.
It was late, and Manson sent a posse of devotees from his ranch into the heart of Los Angeles.
The blood, the knife wounds that these people took, it wasn't one or two knife wounds, it was a lot. They were just completely stabbed and stabbed and stabbed and stabbed. Nothing compares to it, to that murder scene.
Manson ordered his longtime lieutenant, Tex Watson, and two of his lovers, Susan Atkins and Patricia Krenwinkel, to break into the Tate Polanski home and kill whoever they found.
It was a man down call at 10050 Cielo Drive.
25 and just 3.5 years in the job, Bob Burbridge was on call that morning. 6 minutes later, he was at the Tate house, joining other bewildered officers on the scene of unimaginable mayhem.
So I walked in and I came upon a car that was parked kind of askew in the driveway. And I looked into the car and there was a dead body in the car. I looked out on the lawn, about 75 feet away on the front lawn, there were two more bodies. We systematically searched the house, room by room, closet, under beds, bedrooms, hallways. And then we looked into the living room and we saw two more dead bodies. One was with this beautiful lady laying there in her bra and underwear, full-term pregnant, and with a rope wrapped around her neck, going around a beam in the ceiling in the living room. Oh, man, it's hard to... It's so clear in my mind, you know, it's hard to... It bothers me.
What Bob didn't know as he looked at the slain Sharon Tate was that her stabbing murder would become one of the biggest news stories of all time.
These killings just stunned America and the world. This was a worldwide story. They involved everything that we were thinking of then, celebrities, hippies, drugs.
Linda Deutsch was a young reporter filing for Associated Press at the time of the Manson killings. She had the first story on the murders and followed the case through to trial. It's been said that on the 9th of August 1969, the night of the murder of Sharon Tate and her friends, that the 60s stopped.
The 60s as we knew them, the time of flower power and happiness and joy and love, and all of that was over. It was now a time of fear, great fear. The Los Angeles where this happened was in terror.
Sometimes I feel I'm scared to live. Living is what scares me. Dying is easy.
Behind bars 12 years into his life sentence, and this was Charles Manson's first ever interview.
Where I had magical powers, and I told everybody in the chapel, I said, zap, 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 zap. I said, where's my magical powers?
He used it as an opportunity to rant, not to confess to some of America's most heinous murders.
Well, I knew I wasn't going to go to the gas chamber because I hadn't done anything wrong.
In the summer of 1969, members of the Manson family went on a 48-hour killing spree in Los Angeles. On the first night, following his direct orders, 3 of Manson's most faithful followers broke into the residence of Hollywood actress Sharon Tate and mercilessly slaughtered her and 4 others.
The murders were gruesome, horrible. The most horrible we had heard of at that point.
The very next night, the Manson family struck again. This time, Charles Manson took a far more direct role, tying up the residents of this property, Lino and Rosemary LaBianca, but telling them they would not be hurt, just robbed. Then he set his disciples on them and left. Those disciples strangled and stabbed the couple, Rosemary, 41 times before they carved the word war into Lino's stomach and used his blood to write Helter Skelter on the fridge door.
And I said, oh my God, it has happened again. And the LaBiancas had been killed. It was unbelievable, incomprehensible. And no one had even suspected that women were involved.
Having broken the first story on the Tate murders, Associated Press journalist Linda Deutsch was again on reporting duty when the Manson family murdered the LaBiancas. The reaction was widespread terror.
You had a city that was in lockdown. People were buying alarm systems for their houses. People carried guns. They were sure that they were targets. And then when the LaBiancas were killed, that sort of cemented the idea that there were mad killers on the loose.
After killing Sharon Tate and her friends, Manson had called on Tex Watson and Patricia Krenwinkel to murder again. But this time, completing the terror triumvirate was Leslie Van Houten. How Manson could get these women to so savagely kill for him remains one of the great fascinations of this tragedy.
They were mostly disaffected, or they had been involved in drugs, and they were ripe for the picking. He just plucked them off a tree, and he turned them into killers.
What do you think of women?
Oh, I like them. Yeah, they're nice. They're put together well and everything, and they're soft and spongy. Yeah, they're nice. As long as they keep their mouth shut and do what they're supposed to do.
Why do you say that?
Because that's what a woman's supposed to do.
Keep her mouth shut and do what she's supposed to do?
Sure. And that's about the extent of it. All this occult, all that hocus-pocus stuff that you guys are playing, I don't know nothing about all that.
You know nothing about something called Helter Skelter. Tell me, Charles, I don't know.
It's a fairy. It's worse than a fairy tale.
It's a fairy tale.
It's a comedy. It's a comedy tragedy.
The body of Sharon Tate is make-believe, isn't it?
That's make-believe.
Make-believe, yeah.
That's make-believe to the people that went in there and did what they did.
Mm-hmm. And who were those people? You know who, but you know who they were.
Sure I know who they were.
They were with you at the Spawn Ranch. They were part of this thing called, if not the Manson family or the Manson cult, the Manson Ranch. Call it what you will.
So then, what? I'm playing for my life. You working for money.
Hi, Rich. Your words this morning were just what I needed to hear. Thank you.
Leslie Van Houten is about to go before the parole board for a record 22nd time.
I want you to know that we're in this together. I'm feeling good and hope to be able to phone at some point.
So, as she writes from prison, now is a critical moment for her and lawyer Rich Pfeiffer. Is she going to be nervous tomorrow?
Of course, her life is on the line tomorrow. She knows that.
The second longest serving female prisoner in California, Leslie has been behind bars for nearly 50 years for her role in the Manson murders. Twice before, the parole board has granted Leslie parole, only to have her bid for freedom denied by the governor at the 11th hour.
I think Leslie's going to get out.
Why should Leslie be given parole?
Well, she's not a current unreasonable risk to public safety, which is the legal standard, but way more than that is she was a young person indoctrinated into a cult long before the world knew about cults.
Well, I had been taught then that there was no such thing as death.
Leslie was 19 at the time, and she was one of 3 devotees sent out by Manson to kill. It was the second night of Manson's murder spree, and their target was Lino and Rosemary LaBianca.
When she went into the house, her intention was to kill the LaBiancas, and she owns up to that, and that was her part of being accepted by Manson. She wanted to be accepted by Manson.
Do you believe that at that time she completely lost her will? That she lost the ability to know what was right and wrong?
I think she knew what was right and wrong to some degree. She absolutely believed that Charles Manson was Jesus Christ. That's what they were taught. That's what they were drilled in over and over again.
When does Jesus tell his followers that they should go and viciously murder people?
This is what they believed. And she acknowledges that today that, that belief was skewed and everything, but at the time, that's what she believed. And she wasn't alone.
The family's blind faith in Charles Manson persisted through their infamous court case, even with their own lives now in the balance. Their cheeriness and singing belied what they faced. But in January 1971, Leslie Van Houten and Patricia Krenwinkel were convicted of multiple counts of murder, as was Susan Atkins, who repeatedly and fatally stabbed Hollywood star Sharon Tate. All were sentenced to death, which was later commuted to life in jail. So this is where Charles Manson was arraigned. This is where the trials were held.
This is where it was. This is the place.
Reporting from the court case, Linda Deutsch was witness to history.
Stand still a second right there while you're happy. That's very beautiful. Beautiful, Charlie.
And a circus like none had seen before, with Charles Manson also on trial for the 7 horrendous murders.
When he came out of the holding cell into the hallway, he looked like a scared animal, and he was not looking very threatening. He just looked like a little guy in a buckskin outfit.
Not the Messiah.
No.
Even in custody, Manson was controlling his women, instructing them to disrupt every step of the court process. As for his own behaviour, Manson attempted to hypnotise witnesses, including former police officer Bob Burbridge.
And that was the craziest thing, because I was sitting there testifying against him, and they said, don't look at him. And I couldn't help but look at him because he was giving me goo-goo eyes, He's going like this, And I almost started laughing at him, He was just a little weaselly guy.
At the peak of his orchestrated bedlam, Manson tried to attack the judge, declaring he should have his head cut off. Manson was captured by the bailiff, the moment captured by the court artist.
He talked a good game, made himself totally sympathetic, didn't admit that he did anything.
Did you feel any sympathy for him?
No.
Did you find him charismatic?
No.
Did you think he was crazy?
Oh, yeah, he was insane. He was malignantly insane. It was quite a time.
Hello.
Sharon Tate's younger sister, Deborah, was just a teenager when she confronted the madman who had ripped her life apart. When you first came face to face with members of the Manson family, what was that like? What did you see? What did you feel?
I was 16 years old, and Charlie was in the county jail, as were most of the members in the LA County Jail. I had myself smuggled in and looked into his eyes, and there was a lack of emotion. He didn't say a word. I didn't say a word, but I saw what I saw.
You've said in the past that you thought you looked into the eyes of evil.
I did, absolutely. I'm still looking into the eyes of evil.
I'm an outlaw, and I go so far, and then that's all you know.
Deborah also reveals that Manson wrote letters to her from jail.
And those basically state that he's an outlaw and he is what he is.
But in those letters that he wrote to you...
Did he say he was sorry? No.
Did he say that he did it?
No. He said he's an outlaw, and he lives by the outlaw rule, which is he's not going to volunteer information.
Deborah Tate has made it her lifetime mission to keep the Manson murderers behind bars. And so far, she's done so. Charles Manson died in prison in 2017. Susan Atkins in 2009. Still in prison and still hoping for freedom is Tex Watson, as is Patricia Krenwinkel. As for Leslie Van Houten, her bid for parole was granted, and within weeks she could be the first Manson family murderer set free. It's a decision Deborah is fighting, seeking the governor to overturn the parole board's recommendation.
I'm talking about people's lives here. Is it worth taking a chance on? I happen to say no. And I say that because I sit in the room and I can feel their souls.
50 years may be too soon to forgive, certainly too soon to forget. And having so securely imprinted itself into the annals of time, the Manson family killing spree is a crime that will most likely continue to confound and horrify for the next 50 years.
I think that the Manson case will always be, if nothing else, a footnote to the 60s. People will say, and while in the 60s Martin Luther King was assassinated, Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, hippies were roaming San Francisco, the Vietnam War was raging, and in Los Angeles, on one horrible weekend, a man named Manson ordered his followers to kill all these people.
Hello, I'm Tara Brown. Thanks for watching. To keep up with the latest from 60 Minutes Australia, make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can also download the 9Now app for full episodes and other exclusive 60 Minutes content.